In this video, the fourth in a series made for South African grade 12 students in the IEB curriculum, we'll have a quick look at Act 2, Scene 1 of Shakespeare's play The Tempest. In Act 2, we are introduced at greater length to the characters whom Prospero has caused to be shipwrecked on the island. We know already that the castaways are not together in one party, since Ferdinand has already made a solitary appearance in Act 1. And we are told in Act 1, Scene 2, that Prospero specifically commanded Ariel to disperse them into various corners of the island. The reason for the separation will now become clear. It enables Shakespeare to keep the various strands of his plot separate and distinct, and to develop certain themes in isolation, until the moment comes to bind them into a whole. Remember to refer to your knowledge organizer, paying particular attention to the characters of Alonso and his son Ferdinand, as well as Antonio and Sebastian. After the love theme has been established, therefore, we encounter Ferdinand's father, Alonso, and his followers, and we are quickly made aware of another theme, that of conspiracy. Alonso's court is clearly divided rather than being united in misfortune, and before long, Sebastian and Antonio are treacherously planning to murder Alonso. This assassination bid is thwarted by Ariel's intervention on Prospero's behalf. There is a lot of playful language in this scene, especially at the beginning. You'll need to work through the text very carefully in order to understand the wordplay and puns. A very brief summary of the scene is this. While Miranda and Ferdinand are falling for each other, the other men from the shipwreck are searching for Ferdinand. Alonso is concerned for his son. Gonzalo encourages the men who have been washed up onto the shore and says they are lucky to be alive. The men don't listen. They talk about what they would do if they ruled this island. Then all of them, apart from Sebastian and Antonio, are put under a sleeping spell by Ariel. Antonio tries to persuade Sebastian to kill his brother. Sebastian is convinced, so they draw their swords. However, Sebastian then has second thoughts and hesitates. As he does, Ariel appears and sings into Gonzalo's ear that he must wake up. Gonzalo shouts, and everyone wakes up. Sebastian and Antonio make up a story, but Gonzalo is suspicious. This first scene of Act 2 can be divided into two parts. The details in the first section might be a bit difficult to understand because of the witty and rather complex dialogue, which contains obscure references and words that have changed in definition in modern English. But you'll find the overall meaning and feeling quite clear, especially if you watch a filmed performance of the play. In the second part of the scene, Ariel charms everyone except Sebastian and Antonio into a deep sleep. These two men plot to kill Alonso so that Sebastian can become the King of Naples. Ariel wakes up the sleepers just before the plot is carried out. As in the storm scene in Act 1, Scene 1, Shakespeare emphasizes the capacity of the bare stage to create a convincing illusion throughout this scene. As the shipwrecked mariners look around the island, they describe it in poetic terms, giving the audience an imaginary picture of the setting of the play. Even so, they disagree about what they see and even argue over what the island actually looks like. Adrian finds it to be of subtle, tender, and delicate temperance, where the air breathes upon us most sweetly. Gonzalo says that the grass is lush and lusty and green. Antonio and Sebastian, cynical to the last, refuse to let these descriptions rest in the audience's mind. They say that the air smells as it were perfumed by a fen, that's a swamp, and that the ground indeed is tawny or a dull brown. The remarks of Antonio and Sebastian could be easily discounted as mere grumpiness, were it not for the fact that Gonzalo and Adrian do seem at times to be stretching the truth. Adrian, for example, begins his remarks about the island's beauty by saying, "Though this island seemed to be desert, uninhabitable, and almost inaccessible." Thus, the bareness of the stage allows the beauty and the other qualities of the island to be largely a matter of perspective. The island may be a paradise, but only if one chooses to see it that way. Shakespeare uses this ambiguous setting for several different purposes. First, the setting heightens the sense of wonder and mystery that surrounds the magical island. It also gives each audience member a great deal of freedom to imagine the island as he or she so chooses. Most importantly, however, it enables the island to work as a reflection of character. We know a great deal about different characters simply from how they choose to see the island. So the dark, sensitive Caliban can find it both a place of terror, as when he enters frightened and overworked in Act 2, Scene 2, and as a place of great beauty, as you will see in his "The Isle is full of noises" speech in Act 3. Act 2, Scene 1 starts with a distraught Alonso grieving the apparent death of his son, Ferdinand, during the storm at sea. It's Gonzalo who tries to comfort him, saying that while the death of Ferdinand is tragic, their own survival is something of a miracle. He proves himself to be a loyal and optimistic servant to Alonso. Unlike Sebastian and Antonio, who are rude and insensitive to Alonso's grief, echoing their poor behavior aboard the ship in Act 1. They think that they are witty and clever and take great delight in mocking Gonzalo and the two lords, Adrian and Francisco. Their repartee is indeed quick and clever. You'll see the short lines here, the back and forth banter. It's all at odds with the deep feelings experienced by Alonso. Alonso is sure that his son is drowned and that he will never see his daughter, Claribel, again. From various speeches in this scene, we learn that everyone had accompanied Alonso from Naples to Tunis on the north coast of Africa for the wedding of Claribel to the King of Tunis. On the return trip, they were caught in the storm, which blew them to Prospero's island. No wonder the poor man is grief-stricken, as he believes that he has lost both of his children. It also appears that his tears of grief are in part because of the guilt that he feels that he forced his daughter into an unwelcome marriage. These thoughts become significant later in the play, when both fathers, Prospero and Alonso, have to give their blessing to the union of their children, Ferdinand and Miranda. In the conversation about Claribel, the men compare her to Dido, the Greek queen of Carthage, which is found in present-day Tunisia. Details about Dido's character, life, and her role in the founding of Carthage are best known from the account given in Virgil's epic poem, which tells the legendary story of the Trojan hero Aeneas. Dido is described as a clever and enterprising woman who flees her ruthless and autocratic brother after discovering that he was responsible for her husband's death. Through her wisdom and leadership, the city of Carthage is founded and made prosperous. Dido remains an enduring figure in popular culture, and she's featured in plays, artworks, and other media even into the 21st century. Her legacy is especially strong in Tunisia, whose women are sometimes called the daughters of Dido, and where she's regarded as a national symbol. This painting on this slide shows the Greek warrior Aeneas telling Dido about the Battle of Troy. This allusion to Dido would be completely familiar to Elizabethan audiences. You'll remember that a literary allusion is an implied reference to another text. Educated Elizabethans will all have studied Greek mythology and would know the stories of these gods and mortals. While the references or allusions to this legend might be unclear to us, they should prompt some thought on the role of women in this play, and the role of fathers, and the way that they treat their daughters. The whole of Gonzalo's speech in these lines is based on an essay written by Michel de Montaigne, which was translated from the French and published in English in the early 1600s. And the essay is entitled Of Cannibals. De Montaigne describes the ceremonies of the Tupinamba people in Brazil. In particular, he reported how the group ceremoniously ate the bodies of their dead enemies as a matter of honor. In his work, he refers to cultural relativism and compares the cannibalism to the barbarianism of 16th century Europe. De Montaigne argues that the native inhabitants of the New World are naturally superior to corrupt Europeans, as they are uncorrupted by civilization. In other words, they are natural as opposed to artificial. It's possible that Shakespeare is satirizing these beliefs in this speech, as he made it very clear that he valued art and the power that art can have over people. Think, for example, of his portrayal of Prospero as a learned, educated man who is able to assume control over the island and over Caliban. This speech is light-hearted, but it touches on very important issues in the play, not the least of which is the characterization of Caliban. As always, you should be continuing your own notes on the various themes in the play. It's obvious that betrayal is prominent in this scene, as it becomes clear that Alonso is in danger from his own courtiers. The tricking of Prospero is also explained. Prospero's own brother Antonio is a ruthless and power-hungry traitor. The different ways that the characters view the island illustrate the importance of perception. To some, the island is a place of peace and harmony. To others, it represents chaos and disorder. The appearance and the reality are not the same for everyone. The conversations about an idyllic world hint at the debate surrounding colonization and the impact that intruders have on the native inhabitants. Although Caliban is not in this scene, much of what is said here is relevant to his predicament on the island. Be aware of the many motifs and symbols that continue in this scene. One of the key images in the play is that of clothing, the garments worn by each character. You should spend some time thinking about the appearance of each character. Why don't you start your own costume sketches, taking information from the text? You can design your own outfits for each one of these characters. In line 253 of this scene, Antonio responds to Sebastian's comment, "I remember you did supplant your brother Prospero," with a comment about his clothing. He says, "Look how well my garments sit upon me." Antonio has, in symbolic terms, taken Prospero's robes of office, and he points out to Sebastian how well they fit him. There's a complete lack of guilt, a lack of conscience about the crime he has committed. Of course, you need to keep track of the many other symbols too, so you should add to your notes at this point. There's a lot of important dialogue in this scene, but we'll focus on one key quote on the next slide. Antonio's speech to Sebastian is chilling. He envisions a crown dropping upon thy head. It's clear that he's a man of ambition who's prepared to commit heinous crimes in order to achieve his goals. If you've read Macbeth, it should remind you of some of Macbeth's speeches. To check your understanding of this scene, I advise you to answer the questions that follow. Try writing the answers in your notebooks. The first question: how does the behavior of Gonzalo, Sebastian, and Antonio confirm what was revealed of their characters in Act 1, Scene 1? Number 2, what more do you learn about Antonio and Sebastian? The third question: Gonzalo tries to take the king's mind off his troubles by describing the sort of society which he might establish on the island if he had the opportunity. What are the main points that he makes? Number 4, look at Gonzalo's speeches. How do they show that he's not only a kind, but also a garrulous old man? Number 5, Antonio proves himself a master of persuasive speech, as well as a man of no conscience or morality. How does he persuade Sebastian to a commitment to murder Alonso? The second last question: why do Gonzalo and Alonso believe Antonio and Sebastian's story about the roar of a whole herd of lions? And finally, the seventh question. The scene ends with a rhyming couplet. What effect does such a poetic device have, especially where it is placed? So here we are in Act 2, with the various conflicts being illustrated to the audience. The plot is developing, the complications are revealed. It's clear that there are many obstacles facing all of the characters. In the next video lesson, we'll look at the second scene of Act 2. If you would like to check your answers to the 7 questions, keep watching to the end of this video. And please share this video with anyone who could benefit from it. Should you have any queries, please contact me on the email address that you see on the screen.